Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Washoe County Planning Commission, Tuesday, February 4th, 2020, to order. Can we have a determination of a quorum, please?
Larry Chesney.
Present.
Francine Donchik.
Present.
James Barnes.
Here.
Thomas Bruce.
Here.
Sarah Shavelicek.
Here.
Kate Nelson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Commissioner Barnes, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes, please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mr. Edwards, could we have the ethics law announcement, please?
Commissioners are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the commission today, 1, you've received a gift or loan. 2, you have a pecuniary interest. 3, you have a commitment in a private capacity, such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship. Or 4, you provided representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered tonight. Then you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Commissioners are also reminded that under the Planning Commission rules, if you have had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the commission today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you, Counselor. Secretary Pelham, could you please give us the appeal procedure?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Most decisions rendered by the Planning Commission are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Planning Commission and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is signed by the Planning Commission Chair and/or the Secretary of the Planning Commission, filed with the Secretary of the Planning Commission, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and application fee.
Thank you. Do we have any general public comment?
We do. Rhonda Tyser, followed by Carol Black.
I'd like to remind the public that any persons invited to speak on any item on or off the agenda during this period, you have 3 minutes. Action may not be taken on any matter raised during this public comment period until the matter is specifically listed on an agenda as an action item.
Rhonda Tyser.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am Rhonda Tyser, Incline Village resident, and I'm here to talk to you about the community character of Incline Village as referenced in the Tahoe Area Plan. It starts, the purpose of this plan is to implement the planning concepts contained in the TRPA Regional Plan in a manner that is consistent with the desired community character and vision as expressed by the community throughout the development of this plan. So, referenced in this is a Appendix C, which apparently was to include various documents, early documents. But since that was missing in the plan, I got my own documents out and read them. And neither the summary from the Pathway 2000 workshops or the 2012 Nevada Rural Development Council workshops are quoted in this statement. The first statement is true, that the community character and visions supported by this plan is not significantly different from those originally planned. Quote, the desire to maintain a base of permanent residents, doing business, going to school, and recreating in a community designed to integrate with the world-class alpine and lake environment. This is true. However, the second statement which was to establish new opportunities for tourism based on the steady growth in the demand for all forms of recreation, particularly outdoors in a beautiful natural setting, appears nowhere in those documents. The statement was created out of whole cloth by Mr. Young. If I am wrong, and we residents actually said that, he can direct me to the specific page and paragraph of the reports to show me the quote. Otherwise, it should be removed from the plan, so future readers are not misled about the community's priorities. The reason I make this an issue is not because I want to dismiss Mr. Young's excellent work on the plan, most of which I gratefully appreciate. It is to point out that TRPA and Washoe County continue to promote tourism at the expense of the residential character of our Alpine Village. The assault is relentless, almost without exception, be it a cell tower defacing the skyline or short-term rentals disintegrating the neighborhoods. You continue to promote Incline Village as a vacation destination, in direct contradiction to our repeated cries for our community character to be a beautiful Alpine Village of residents who care deeply about our town and want to save it from over-tourism. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol Black, followed by Alexandra Profant.
That's not too bad. You all have copies of this. I sent you an email yesterday and one slide deck, and I passed out a slightly revised one this evening, so you can follow along. Basically, I'm here, Carol Black, I'm an Incline Village resident, and I'm here to talk about the area plan and a little bit short-term rentals. The top quote here is from a Boeing Airlines employee, and it was around the 837 MAX discussion. It was from an email, and it was quoted in a congressional hearing that I heard on CNN. Nothing we do is so important that it's worth hurting someone. I think that's an important concept for us to think about as we think about some of what we're talking about doing here. In the area up at the lake, we don't want to have another Orinda where a renter lied and there was quite a horrific outcome. Or Paradise, where there was not adequate preparation, evacuation capability, and it was horrific outcome. And in addition, the water supply up there is still contaminated. We don't want to have any of these other things happening. We need your support. Tourism's important, so are your residents, and the current proposals have a lot of gaps. I have concerns about the process here. This is an infrequent occurrence. This update is really important, and there's a huge amount of material that's given to you all at the last minute and to us at the last minute. And there's a lot of ticks and ties that need to be figured out in order to be sure we've covered the bases. I think there are gaps in the bases. I don't think a 3-minute public comment snippet from 20 different people really does the job. I have another property in another town. There we did an area plan. There we had study sessions with the Planning Commission. We went over chapter by chapter. It really makes a difference. And we also don't have a District 1 representative, I don't think, on your body today, so that also is an issue. So I'd like to suggest that we think about those things going forward. I think at this point, I'd suggest you delay approval of this document, even though I know it's had a lot of work and effort by a lot of different people who worked very hard. The reason is, I think it needs more review. 423 pages of a document released last week is kind of a lot to assume that anyone's going to absorb, and you're going to get adequate, robust feedback, in my opinion. The proposal is also misleading for a variety of reasons. It obscures embedded major zoning changes by virtue of pulling over the TRPA documents. It has some incorrect assumptions about area occupancy, fails to address several public health and dangerous safety issues, in particular that we can't be evacuated in time, and prioritizes policies that don't really address root causes and lacks robust measurement. And I don't think it meets the requirements. This you will not be able to read. You have copies. It's got a lot of detail, but it kind of goes through all the issues. And I've got pages and pages of data behind it, which I'd be happy to go through with you some other day when I'm allowed a little more than 3 minutes. But I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the staff work. They've been great. I just think this is a huge undertaking, and we need to be more thoughtful. Thank you very much.
Alexandra Perfont.
This is on. Good evening. My name is Alexandra Profon. I am submitting an application this evening for the District 1 Planning Commissioner seat. I have written paper applications. There are enough copies for each one of you. I'm going to use up this first public comment time, and I anticipate that I will probably be speaking again after this, but I cannot reiterate enough what Ms. Black has said. I was a chair and co-chair of the Incline Vision planning effort back in 2004, which was an overlay of the Pathways 2007 effort, facilitated by the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, multiple agencies at the lake, the Federal Lake Tahoe Advisory Committee, the Forest Service. It's considered the most complex planning region in the country, if not the world. To assume that we could actually come up with reasonable comments when we have not been heard by you due to the efforts which were thwarted, I would allege, by prior IFGID trustees, wherein there was no concept or understanding that under Section 106 United States Code annotated Title 16, we have a right to be heard by a certified local government. It was years later that we learned through the State Historic Preservation Office that the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency serves as our certified local government. Now, there's a lot of complexity to that, especially jurisdictionally, but the point is that having been from Nevada, most of us are not anti-development here. We're pro-freedom. We're pro-architectural self-determinism. However, Nevada and California, and especially this region, has an incredibly rich history, relevant and relative to our nation. We will, when we finally do our historic resources survey, competently with staff, which, by the way, I was told Washoe County did create a historic preservation planning effort, but it got abandoned 2 years in, we will likely outcompete many other regions in this country. This also has an overlay and intersection with all the zoning regulations, transient occupancy, and most importantly, emergency management planning. At present, there is no fire marshal for the state. We are waiting for the governor to appoint one. There's an acting one, and there's no fire services board that serves us at this time. While the North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District and other districts in District 1, fire districts that is, serve us, there's a commingling with the Coast Guard and other emergency management planning agencies, which often can include the fire marshal. The fire marshal has also done investigations for the fires due to short-term rental issues up there. I will speak again. Thank you for hearing me, and I will submit my application now.
No further public comment.
Okay. Do we have any comments on the agenda? I'll take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Doncheck and a second by Commissioner Stavilcek. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Possible action to approve the January 7th, 2020 minutes. Any discussion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Doncheck and second by Commissioner Stavilcek.
No, that wasn't me. That was
Nelson.
Oh. The Commissioner Nelson. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Passes unanimous. Okay. Item number 8. Since Mr. Haran could not make it tonight, I would like to defer this to next month. Do we need a motion on it?
No, you don't need a motion. Staff can just have it put on the next agenda.
Okay,
Bring it
great.
back. You may want to poll and see if anybody here wants to speak on it, because I don't know if anybody else came tonight to speak for Mr. Haran.
Are you talking about public?
Public. Yep.
Do we have anybody from the public wants to speak on it?
I have no request for public comment.
All right, moving right along. I'm going to open the public hearing with item 9A. Mr. Secretary, would you please give us the...
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Special use permit case number WSUP 19-0030, A Dog's Life. For possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve a special use permit to operate a commercial kennel. Commercial kennels refers to kennel services for dogs, cats, and similar animals. Typical uses include commercial animal breeding with 4 or more animals, dogs, boarding kennels, pet motels, or dog training centers. Commercial kennels require a parcel size minimum of 2.5 acres, regardless of the regulatory zone within which it is located. The project site will consist of a 20,000 square foot building, associated landscaping, and parking. In addition to the commercial kennel, this project will also include a grooming and pet supply store and a construction sales and services operation that will function as a material storage and takeoff point for the contractor. 15,000 square feet of building is planned to function as the commercial kennel with boarding and doggy daycare. 2,000 square feet of the building will function as a retail in the form of a grooming and pet supply store. 3,000 square feet will function as the construction, sales, and services operation. Both the pet supply store and construction, sales, and services uses are allowed without a special use permit and are incidental to the operation of the commercial kennel. Lastly, the special use permit also includes grading of an area of over 1 acre on a parcel smaller than 6 acres in size.
Thank you. Do we have any disclosures by Commissioners, Ethics, or Ex parte Communications?
Chair Chesney, I have a disclosure.
Commissioner Nelson.
The company I work with, JP Engineering, has provided the site lighting and photometric study for this project. I did not work on this project, but again, the company I work with did.
Okay. Can you repeat the nature of the work they did, the site
The
map and
site
lighting?
Site lighting and photometric study.
Okay. This is one of, I would guess, many clients of the company that you work for?
Yes,
Okay, and you had no involvement with this particular project?
that's correct.
So the 4 categories, again, are pecuniary interest, commitment to private capacity, receipt of a gift or loan, or counseling or representation. The second 3 don't apply here, so what we're talking about is a pecuniary interest. You don't have a pecuniary interest in the outcome of this project unless I'm hearing you incorrectly. That is to say, you don't stand to gain or lose from a monetary standpoint, whether this is approved or denied. Is that right?
That's correct.
Has your superiors at work spoken with you at all about this, mentioned it to you, those types of things?
No, they haven't.
And they're aware that you're on the Washoe County Planning Commission?
That's correct.
Okay. Let me ask you another question that I think is relevant in this context, because the standard is objective, it's not subjective. I think if I ask you if you could be impartial on this, I think your answer probably would be yes. Am I right about that?
That's correct.
And that's well and good, but the standard, as I said, is objective. And so the question is whether a reasonable person would be able to act impartially and not feel any kind of, external influence because of their pecuniary interest or their position that they're in. What's the nature of life for you at work like if, for example, you vote against a project like this? Do you anticipate catching any flack or anything like that?
No,
Okay, and likewise, if you voted in favor of it, would you anticipate, getting any kind of special treatment or anything like that?
no.
is there any concern in your mind that your employer's client might be irritated with your employer if one of their employees were to vote against their project?
No,
Okay. And you haven't had any discussions about anything like that?
no.
Okay. So oftentimes, when you all make disclosures, it's very clear cut, and it's pretty simple. I've asked more questions than I typically ask on these tonight because this one's a little bit murkier. My concern here is from the objective perspective, whether or not people would consider it reasonable that those factors might play into your thinking or a planning commissioner's thinking in deciding this item, not you specifically. I believe you when you say that you can act impartially on it, and if it were a subjective standard, that would be the end of the hunt. It's a valid disclosure for sure. I'm glad you made it. That's my concern. I'll stop short of giving you a recommendation unless you want me to give you one. If you want me to give you a recommendation of what I think, whether or not you should recuse, I will gladly give it on the microphone right here and now. If not, I've advised you on what the law is. I've told you what the standard is, and you are free to make a decision on your own. It's ultimately up to you. I don't get to decide whether you do or don't recuse yourself, but I'm happy to give you an opinion if you do want one.
Since I'm fairly new, I would appreciate your opinion.
Okay, my opinion is you should recuse yourself.
Okay, I will do so.
Thank you. And since we haven't had one of these in a while, the typical protocol on these is for the recused commissioner to wait out in the foyer until the item is done, and then we'll send somebody out to come bring you back once it's over.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Nelson, and thank you, Mr. Edwards. Now I'm going to open the public hearing, and we have a presentation from staff.
Good evening. Chris Bronzik, Washoe County Planning. Today we're looking at WSUP 19-30. This is A Dog's Life. The applicant is requesting a special use permit to operate a commercial kennel within the Spanish Springs area plan. As mentioned, commercial kennels do require a minimum lot size of 2.5 acres. However, within the Spanish Springs area plan, they are only permitted within the industrial regulatory zone. Additionally, within the Spanish Springs, they do require this special use permit to be heard by the Planning Commission. The subject parcel does conform to both requirements, as it is 2.75 acres and it is zoned industrial. I provided a vicinity map for you. As you can see, the subject parcel is adjacent to Pyramid Highway. It backs up to a U-Haul, a mini storage location, and it is within the Spanish Springs Industrial Park. I provided the landscape plan that the applicant has provided staff. As you can see, it's a pretty well-developed site. They are proposing paved parking, paved access, egress and ingress. They are looking at a significant sized retention pond, as well as numerous outdoor exercise areas for the dogs. The proposed elevations for the commercial kennel. So the site is proposed to have additional uses outside of this commercial kennel. They're looking at a construction, sales, and services. So within 20,000 square feet of this structure, 3,000 square feet will be used for this construction, sales, and services. This is an allowed use by right and does not require any additional review. Additionally, they're looking at 2,000 square feet for a retail use type. Again, it is allowed by right. And then lastly, they are looking at a grooming and pet store associated with their use, also allowed by right. The commercial kennel will have 100 kennels associated with it, with the indoor kennel size being 4 by 5 feet and outdoor kennel sizes at 4 by 7 feet. They are proposing 4 exercise areas, 2 indoor and 2 outdoor, and they are separated by large and small dogs. The applicant is proposing a monument sign. The monument sign that they did propose does conform to Article 505 requirements. They are also proposing 40 parking spaces, which exceeds the required parking space within Washoe County's Development Code. Additionally, they are proposing phased construction. So I want to go back to this. As you can see, there's large open spaces that are intended to be graded as part of the site, but they are part of Phase 2. The applicant is aware that any additional uses that may trigger a special use permit under the Spanish Springs area plan will have to come back. And if any sort of disturbance with grading at that time triggers an additional SUP, they will also have to come back. But Phase 2 is proposed to be in that large green space closer to the roadway. Additionally, the application did include grading plans. The intent of the grading is to prepare the site as well as create a berm parallel to Pyramid Highway to allow for screening and buffering, as well as create the retention pond. No importation is anticipated. However, excavation is anticipated to be 3,965 cubic yards. So public notice was sent to 58 property owners within 900 feet of the site. This application was heard at the regularly scheduled Spanish Springs Citizen Advisory Board meeting on January 8th. There were numerous concerns that were brought up at the meeting, from noise concerns and staff numbers to hours of operation. However, within the meeting, the Spanish Springs Citizen Advisory Board did vote 4-0 to recommend approval for the proposed kennel and associated uses. So these are the 5 findings for a special use permit: consistency, improvements, site suitability, issuance not detrimental, and effect on a military installation. Staff is able to make all 5 findings and is recommending approval with conditions. I provided a possible motion on the screen above, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Any questions at this time? I'll ask a question.
The one concern I have is the turn there with the traffic. It's a 65-mile-an-hour area on Pyramid Highway, and it's my opinion that at least for some time, the primary traffic is going to be going north and turning left. And in the morning, the primary route for the rest of the traffic is south. That's my concern. I mean, I have a concern with that. Otherwise, I don't really see much of a problem. So when is there going to be a light?
So, I wouldn't have that information to be able to relay to you. However, I can say that this application was submitted to the Nevada Department of Transportation for review. No concerns or comments were received back from NDOT. Additionally, Washoe County's own traffic engineer reviewed this plan, and no concerns related to traffic or the like were provided to staff.
Were there any numbers as to what kind of traffic they expected in and out? I mean, they have 100 animals there. That means, or they have 100 cages, you said.
Correct. The applicant did submit a traffic study. Based off of the use type that was submitted, it would not trigger the 80 peak ADT to require a full traffic study. So therefore, no full traffic study was required or conducted at this time.
Thank you.
Chair Chesney? I do have a question.
Commissioner Seville-Jack.
Thank you. With regards to if the material storage and the other services that you said would be on this premise were allowed by right, why are they included in this special use permit?
So when I include those, it's just to give you a full picture. It's just to provide more detail, more aspect. But in terms of,
But all we are making a decision on is the special use permit for a boarding kennel
that is
and
correct.
and commercial associated with boarding and grooming.
That is correct, but that might be something legal can weigh in on.
Yes, your special use permit determination tonight is just about the commercial kennel.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Bronzik answered that correctly, that it's offered up as information so you can understand what is going on with the site and the overall uses. A lot of times we get map applications or SUP applications, and we have sort of this tabula rasa about the rest of it. We don't know what's going to go in there, and I think that was just an effort to kind of, round out the picture for everyone. But the other two uses are allowed by right, so they're not part of the special use permit.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions, do we have an applicant presentation?
Good evening. For the record, Dave Snellgrove. I'm Planning and Right-of-Way Manager with CFA. Try and cover some of the questions as I go through my presentation. Chris did a great job in covering the basics, and I'm not going to try and reiterate too much of what he had. I'll go over things very quickly. Locationally, we are on the west side of Pyramid Highway. Chris mentioned, and we'll get into some photos that are a little bit closer. On the north and west sides of this, we're adjacent to mini storage, boat and RV storage, and have industrial zoning all around us on the west side of the highway. On the east side of the highway, it's commercial. We're 3/4 of a mile plus or minus to Calle de la Plata, 2 3/4 plus or minus miles to La Posada and Eagle Canyon. Property is relatively flat. It's got some grade to it, but it's very developable. This was in the business park for the Spanish Springs area, which has been kind of slow to develop. This is a good location for the applicants. They found this site, and Rich and Christine Wilson are here with me in the audience. They'll be available to answer any questions that you have operationally regarding the site. What I want to point to is the upper right-hand corner. That looks down Pyramid Highway, and you can see in the distance, you can see the RV storage and boat storage area, but along the frontage is some taller landscape area. Well, that's built up on a berm. That's actually a requirement in the Spanish Springs area plan that we provide similar type berming for screening and buffering. It wasn't something that was just put in by design. It's actually a requirement in the Spanish Springs area plan. There is some landscaping around the perimeter of the site. You can see in the bigger photo and also the bottom right. That's actually on the mini storage property. So the property line includes their exterior buffering and screening. So additional buffering and screening will increase the apparent width of that, even though part of it's on the boat and RV storage site. Here's a copy of the master plan, which identifies the industrial on the western side of the street, and across the street, across Pyramid Highway, there's an area of commercial before you get to single-family residential. Zoning in the county's maps conforms with what you have in the master plan with industrial on the west side of the street, and neighborhood commercial is the actual zoning designation on the east side of the highway. The existing site is 2.75 acres, very gently sloping. It's currently vacant or undeveloped. I'm going to get into the site plan, which you've already seen, pointed out by Chris in his presentation. It'll be indoor kennel with outdoor play areas. We do have some indoor play areas as well, and I'll highlight those as I go through the presentation. The outdoor play areas, in terms of the hours of operation, this is one of the questions that came up, and Chris covered that at the Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting. The applicants have identified and self-imposed 7 a.m. is when the dogs would go out in the morning. People would drop them off. They'll have dogs that are boarded there overnight. They may be there for a few days or a week if someone's out of town, but they'll also have drop-off and doggy daycare if somebody brings their animal or brings their dog in the morning and then picks them up in the evening. So 7 a.m. would be the morning time when they'd use the outdoor play areas. And again, we have significantly sized indoor play areas as well. 6 p.m. is the evening outdoor play area where the masses of dogs, when they're out, they'll come back in. All dogs for daycare have to be picked up by 6:30. So the population of dogs will go down drastically at night. I'm not going to say that there won't be some dogs outside at night because they will have to take potty breaks at times. Those will either be individually or they'll be in small groups of dogs, not a mass going out and barking and possibly creating any nighttime noise for the residents, which about 650 plus or minus feet away over to the eastern side. And that's my next point. Nearest residential property is about 650 feet to the east. There's no direct ingress or egress from Pyramid Highway, and I will cover, there was a question about the intersection, and I'll go through our intersection locations and where we have driveways coming out as we look at the site plan. Our landscaping berm along Pyramid Highway is required by the Spanish Springs area plan, and there is also a 150-foot setback for 1- and 2-story buildings as part of the Spanish Springs area plan. And we have an open area out in front which will be inclusive of parking, and we have some outdoor storage area, and I'll point that out on the site plan, which we're at right now. So you've seen the site plan, and I'll highlight certain items. And this is a reason why it makes a lot of sense to have the pet supply store and grooming, and also the contractor's office in there. That 20,000 square feet is inclusive of all three of the uses. 15,000 square foot dog kennel, 2,000 square foot pet supply store, and also the construction office of 3,000 square feet. So without the dog kennel going forward, the other two uses don't come as well. So by them being included in there, that's just what the intent is for the overall use of that brown area with the building. But we've got the large dog area, which I put Clifford the big red dog on there, and then we have the small dog play area. Now, I wanted to point this out that our homes are closest on the eastern side, and we have the smaller dogs which don't have the big loud barks. They can be heard, don't get me wrong, but they don't have as loud carrying barks, generally speaking. So we do have the smaller dogs in closer proximity to any residential that's across the highway. And the larger dogs, their nearest neighbor is boats and RVs and backs of mini storage. So we're hopeful that they're not going to complain. The future building pad areas, the phase 2 part of this is in these green areas, and there's 27,550 square feet in where it says future building pad. We'd anticipate that'll probably have some additional parking and additional building. If a use needs a special use permit, it would come right back here before this board if that's what's directed by the use table in the Spanish Springs area plan. If there's a use that's allowed by right, they could go out and construct and go through the building permit process. Out along Pyramid Highway, we've got a future parking area. Again, there's a 150-foot setback, which I'll get a line on here in just a minute, that shows you why we can't put a building out there. The berm location will match in with the berming to the north, which has been provided along the frontage of the boat and RV storage, mini storage project, and that's required by the Spanish Springs area plan. And this line here is approximate location of that 150-foot setback line. It's 150 feet from the right-of-way of Pyramid Highway, has to be left open. You can't have a 1- or 2-story building. If you went to a 3-story building, the setback goes even farther. So what we're allowed to have out there really is parking. We've got our trash enclosure, which doesn't really count as a building, and we've got some outdoor storage, which will be screened by the berm. This is our floor plan. This will help illustrate. You can see on the left side, the outdoor play area, that's an outside element. On the right-hand side, you've got the small dog play area. Interior, excuse me, you've actually got larger play areas interior than you have on the exterior. So in the evenings, the dogs don't just go into kennels, they have the indoor play area. And that's what Rich and Christine Wilson have identified, that, you know, when they come in, they're still able to play, even though it may be light outside, but there's plenty of room inside to handle the dogs that'll be there. And in the evenings, you'll be dealing with the dogs that are kenneled, and the daycare dogs will all be gone. Down the right-hand corner, you can see with the location of the pet store, grooming, and the construction office of 2,000 and 3,000 square feet. That kind of helps illustrate what we're proposing in this one 20,000 square foot building envelope. The building elevations, it's going to be a steel building, but it will be treated on the front. The back will look more like a steel building, but the front will have some treatment so that it appears not just as an industrial looking building, even though it's an industrial area, but we've got to meet some design standards. And talking to the Wilsons and some of the contractors they've been interviewing, the roof line on the front element may change a little bit, so this ends up going up. I don't want you surprised. I'd like full disclosure. So there may be some change, and part of that is to try and get the building so that it's, one, cost effective for the client, but two, can create a clear span that they don't have structural supports coming down. So we may or may not be able to accomplish both of those items if we leave it with the stepped elevation. So it may come out and meet at a peak, but we'll still have that element over the front door that goes into the kennel and doggy daycare. The legal findings, you'll see a lot of these are, Chris has a plethora of them in the staff report. Some are probably duplicating what I had here. These are from my application form. In terms of improvements, and all utilities are accessible and adjacent to the site. We've got the streets, the sewer, the electric, the water is all right there. The site is ready to be developed. Site suitability, finding C and D. So site suitability and issuance not detrimental. Those I covered really similarly in the fact that the kennel is going to be located directly adjacent to industrial properties, and our nearest neighbors are very quiet users in mini storage and boat and RV. About 650, 675 feet across to the nearest residential uses. And the dogs will be indoors at nighttime, so a lot of these, the concerns that typically come with kennels, we've eradicated the lion's share, if not all of the concerns. A lot of it comes down to noise, and because this is an indoor kennel at night, those issues really go away. All the property surrounding, I went through that. This has no effect on military installation, so that finding E is not applicable. Go down really quick. I think it's on my last slide here. Oops. There was a comment about a traffic report, and we submitted traffic generation letters. Paul Salegi prepared this. There's not a dog kennel or doggy daycare in the Institute of Traffic Engineers manual. So the closest thing is an actual daycare center. So that's what you had to use. We found some other reports from around the country that did exactly the same thing. So this is kind of the standard. Your peak hour trips, you have 51 PM peak hours and 52 AM peak hour trips in association with the kennel. Then you've got an additional 5, you've got a few more trips in association with the grooming shop, retail, and the construction office. None of these, as Chris mentioned, trip the threshold for a full-blown traffic report, but the trip generations on this, overall average daily trips, that's one trip in would be one trip, and then when they leave would be another trip. So if somebody dropped their dog off, it would be the equivalent of 4 trips. Came out to 387 trips. I understand the question and concern about, well, most of the traffic's going to be coming down the highway and the left turn movement in. NDOT will need to make those determinations in terms of when warrants are met for a traffic signal. They didn't have any comment relative to this project. At some point, as this area gets built up, I would fully expect that such an improvement will come forth. This project will pay its share and responsibility of the regional road impact fee, and those are the types of improvements that can be paid for out of the regional road impact fee. I wouldn't see that a traffic signal all of a sudden triggers because of this. And NDOT hasn't identified as such. They didn't identify that they had any significant concern. But with that, I will close my presentation and be available for any questions you might have.
Any question of the owner's representative from commission? Okay. Seeing none, I guess we'll move on to public comment. Do we have any general public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Any further commission questions? Staff, applicant, anybody? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Any discussion between the commissioners?
Chair Chesney, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Commissioner Safilicek.
Thank you. I move, after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approve with the conditions included in Exhibit A in the staff report, special use permit case number WSUP 19-0030 for Dixie Day May Trust, having made all findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code 110.810.30, and all findings have been found.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Beat me.
Commissioner, motion by Commissioner Safilicek, a second by Commissioner Bruce. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to,
We need to go get our other commissioner.
Yes, we need.
oh, yeah.
Hello.
Venture Commissioner Nelson. You can come out of the corner now.
You're not the only, I recused myself about a year ago.
All right, I'm going to call agenda item 9B, abandonment case number WAB 19-003, Cooper easement. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, abandonment case number WAB 19-0003, Cooper easement, for possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve abandoning a portion of the access and utility easement bulb located at the southwestern corner of the subject parcel in order to create a non-constrained buildable area, and variance case number WPVAR 19-0003, Cooper variance, for possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve a variance to the setbacks located on the relocated easement per WAB 19-0003. The required setbacks are 30 feet front and rear and 50 feet on the side yards. The variance request is for 0 feet for the front yard setback off of the relocated access easement and a 10-foot side yard setback on the western property line.
Do we have, thank you. Do we have any disclosures by commissioners, ethics, or ex parte?
Just for the record, I've driven here within the last week.
Okay. Good. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing, and we have a staff presentation.
Dan Colon, Washoe County Planning, for the record. This case is WAB 19-0003 and WPVAR 19-0003, Cooper abandonment and variance. So the background on this application is the applicant is requesting to abandon a portion of their existing access easement bulb in favor of a hammerhead turnaround. The applicant is also requesting to vary the setbacks. Currently, they are 30 feet in the front and rear and 50 feet on the sides, to a 0-foot front yard setback and a 10-foot western side yard setback. This property has a general rural regulatory zone. Provided a vicinity map for you guys just to get an idea. It's to the east of the main intersections in Spanish Springs. So
What I've provided here are the abandonment details. I will make a note here to say that these are not in scale with each other. They are to scale, just not the same scale. So what we're seeing here is we're abandoning a access easement bulb in favor of a more space-efficient hammerhead turnaround, which you can see on the site map down in the southwestern corner. You can see that the hammerhead is very much smaller than what you see as the dotted rounded line, which would be for the setbacks with the access easement bulb. Here's the slope map. As you can see, the site is very constrained in terms of slope. Anything that is green is actually what is unconstrained, and everything that is not green is constrained. The red is in excess of 30% slope. Therefore, as you can see here, that it would be difficult to place and access any structure on the property without having to undertake major grading. So the analysis, the abandonment will result in a buildable area of around 5,000 square feet without needing to modify any setbacks. Staff feels that this is sufficient for a large single-family residential building, and it does not require large-scale grading. Alternatively, the variance is not required, as the setbacks provide a large enough buildable area without having any constraints by the exceptional topography of the parcel itself. If you were to grant a variance, this would create special privileges inconsistent with the limitations on other properties in the vicinity. Notice for this was sent out to 33 affected property owners within 1,400 feet of the site. I do want to make a note here that I did receive an additional comment via email this morning. I believe it should be on the diocese for you guys to review. That was in opposition to the applications. The applications were presented before the Spanish Springs Citizens Advisory Board on January 8th. Key topics that were discussed were the steepness of the terrain and the constraining geographic features, whether or not the lot actually had any buildable area because of an underground electrical utility easement, and issues regarding legal precedent potentially being set based on the abandonment language included in the application that the county provides to all applicants. The Spanish Springs Citizens Advisory Board voted unanimously to recommend denial of both the abandonment and the variance. However, the CAB voiced their support for the abandonment despite concerns over setting legal precedent based on the language within the Washoe County abandonment application. I have the language here. To the extent that Washoe County does not own the easements in question, it cannot abandon them. Therefore, an abandonment request is, in effect, a quitclaim by the county of whatever interest it may have in the easements in favor of the owners who applied for the abandonment. For example, if the abandonment is approved by Washoe County and recorded, it will likely affect the allowable building envelope on the property to the benefit of the applicant. However, even if the abandonment is approved, it should not be construed as an assertion by the county of ownership over the easements in question. To the extent other property owners nearby or other entities might have any ownership interest in these easements, an approved abandonment by the county does not affect those interests, and the property owners associated with this abandonment are responsible for utilizing whatever legal mechanisms are necessary to address those interests on their own. Just wanted to provide clarification on that. Abandonment findings, staff finds that they are able to make all three of the abandonment findings, the consistency with the master plan, no detriment to surrounding properties or the public, and no impact on existing public utility easements. Therefore, staff recommends approval with conditions of the abandonment. For the variance, however, we are unable to make all 5 of the variance findings, finding it difficult to make a conclusion in favor of special circumstance or no special privileges. Therefore, staff recommends that the commission deny the requested variance. I have provided a possible motion for both the abandonment for approval and likewise a possible motion for the variance in terms of denial. I'm available for any questions that the board may have.
Any questions for staff? There's no applicant presentation, is there?
Yes.
Is there?
We do have an applicant. It's Ryan Switzer for the.
Oh, let's have the applicant's presentation, then we'll do. We'll do the questions. Yeah.
My name is Ryan Switzer. I'm a civil engineer with Robinson Engineering here in town. I'm the civil engineer for the project, and I'm just here to represent the Coopers. And based on Dan's presentation, we're fully in support of approval of the abandonment and denial of the variance, because we understand the building envelope grows quite a bit with the approval of the abandonment application. So don't have a full-fledged presentation for you, but I'm here to answer any technical questions that may come up.
Any questions? None, or of staff? Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
We do. Larry Cooper, followed by Brenna Smith.
Good evening. No relationship to the other Coopers. Can we put up that slide? Can you put that up there that shows the location of the property? Pardon? It's the one that, well, I have these. Can I pass these around? Right. You can put it up on the, how about this one here? I'm not checked out in this apparatus here.
To your right.
On the-
To the right of your podium, there you go.
That's pretty cool. Okay. The square, the yellow square, that's the property in consideration. See the southern border there? Larry, that's me. That's my house, right on that property, and the Parkers who are here are to the left. My understanding is they want to come zero over right next to my property. There's actually at the top of that yellow edge there, that's where the utility runs. So they have to stop right at the utility. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Not quite.
Okay, well, years ago, they put up huge power lines along the eastern side, and so I'm dealing with that. Those are my backyard now. And I bought this property to have lots of room from neighbors, and I've enjoyed it. I don't want it any closer than it has to be. Those folks were aware of those easements when they bought, and I'm comfortable with that being turned down. I just don't want the house right up as close as it can be. Just a personal feeling about it. So I like my room. That's why I moved there, and I'd like to keep it that way as much as possible. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Brenna Smith.
Sean, leave that there? Okay.
I'm Brenna Smith. If I look at this correctly, this property,
Speak in the microphone, please.
sorry, this property is mine. Because the yellow is in question, right? Right? That's
That's
okay.
the
The only
applicant's
question I
property.
have, because this is not the right, I didn't have all the information, so I was kind of here more to learn what exactly was happening. But from what I've gathered in the 5 minutes I read the whole entire packet that was there, which I wish I could have gotten in the mail with the notice, but this is the easement that would go to the backside of my property. So if this is abandoned, how do I get the backside of my property? That's, I mean, because at this point, it's an easement when any access for anybody, correct? That's what easements are for? Okay. Either way, my property line is right on this side of it, so I can't access that part if that easement is gone, because there is this canyon, unbuildable area, which, like Larry stated, was, I mean, the property was bought like that. Nothing changed, no acts of nature made it change, so they have to build on the line. So that's my only thing, is how do I access the backside of my property if that easement is gone away? Thank you.
Any further public comment?
We have Dean, and I cannot make out the last name, so Dean, who would like to speak on this?
My name's Dean Tischler. I'm a property owner close to this. The main person who's going to be affected by this can't make it. He has pneumonia tonight, so he's very sick. Couldn't make it. He's the property directly to the west. This property, well, I can point here. This is this gentleman's property. He will be affected the most. Their property sits approximately 160 feet above where his house is, the property below. So if you put a 2-story house, it'd be like having the Nugget Tower towering right over the top, and they want to go 10 feet to the property line. That's unacceptable. We moved out there, 10-acre parcels. History, well, let me go back. If you can see, I'd like to hand these out, and I got a colored print here so you can see the lot. Maybe it doesn't matter, but it's a very small corner here that's even buildable. And let me tell you the story, because I don't think staff or you're getting the whole story. Let me bring up, here's the map of the property. Here's where Larry was. That's the Parkers. This is the road coming up, the easement they're talking about. This is the bulb that they're talking about, okay? They forgot to tell you the underground power line is running on the inside and actually dissects that bulb. That's there. That is the Sierra Pacific easement. Now, we got to go back to the original, when this property was subdivided into 40 acres, or as a 40-acre parcel. It was broke down. You see the property directly to the north has the same exact easement and a bulb. The question is, why did they create the easement that way? And the reason is, it came to the county when it got broke down, and the county required, and if you noticed on there, Sierra Pacific signed it, because it goes into steep property. It's the last parcels. They required a turnaround for equipment. You got big rigs for equipment. And now they created, you go back to the new easement that lays right over the top of this and dissects the bulb going back. The underlying power line is now dissecting that bulb. Well, the reason they created that bulb was for safety and easement. Not only that, safety of fire trucks. That canyon right there.
Sir, your time is up. I'm sorry.
Anyways, it's a safety hazard also. Wildfire range went across there 20 years ago, burnt that whole property. It could have done it 4 years ago and ended up going east.
Sir, your time
We
is
were
up.
lucky. That's why it was there.
Do we have any further public comment?
No further public comment.
Okay, seeing there's no further public comment, are there any questions of the applicant or staff before I close the public comment? Or the hearing?
I guess I do have one question, and that is, it seems to me that, and I'll ask it of staff, it seems to me that Sierra or Nevada Energy line there is a very big line in terms of capacity, because there was a war about burying it. And I don't remember what it is, something like 300,000 volts. Is that correct?
Dan Colon for the record. There is a 10-foot public utility access, and that's not affected by this abandonment whatsoever. It's still in effect, and as far as we're concerned, that's not going to be affected by changing from a access bulb to a fire-rated hammerhead turnaround.
Okay, because as I said, I drove up there and I looked at it, and it's there, but it's hard to make it out. But I could see where the last pole, where they went underground and to run it down, and I have lived out there for 20 years, so I have some idea of it. And I was very concerned about what's going to happen, because anybody that touches that, it's going to be not only expensive, but it's liable to be a blackout.
I understand that. As you can see with this abandonment detail here, is you can see that the actual turnaround, the width of the legs of the turnaround are 20 feet. The actual easement for the electrical supply line is 10 feet. It would be within that, and you would not be able to build there. And building in the other areas, if we could move two further on. No, somewhere. Never mind, I've got it. Here we go. So you see here, where that easement runs is where that green strip is on the very southern side, and you would not be able to build there as it is anyways. Since we are recommending a denial of the variance, we would not be changing the front or side yard setback. So the front yard setback would still be 30 feet, which would be at the very least 20 feet over that easement, and likewise 50 feet for the side yard, depending on how you interpret it. So
That's fine. No, that was my concern. I mean, there is the utility and the propensity of the utilities to, particularly AT&T, to think they know where it is. And so that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair Chesney, I have a question of staff.
Commissioner
Just for clarification, so the 10-foot easement, and it's just a public utility easement that remains all the way across the...
we are only touching the access easement, so just the bulb. The easement for the public utility is not being affected, not changed whatsoever in this application. It's literally just for where you can turn your cars around.
So the property to the east will still have the ability to use that, even though it's not an access easement, it's...
My understanding is that unless it is a deeded access, they do not have public access as of right now. They have access through, I believe, the north and east to their property, and that is their public access.
So it doesn't make it a landlocked parcel then? They have other
Exactly.
access.
The other parcel is not landlocked.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing no further questions, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any discussion by the commission? Seeing no discussion, I guess I'll call for a motion.
Chairman Chesney.
Commissioner Doncheck.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approve with conditions included as Exhibit A in the staff report, abandonment case WAB 19-0003 for Cooper, having made all three findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110-806-20. Do I do the second one in concurrence, or do I need to do them separately?
I think, well, it kind of depends on what your motion's going to be.
To deny.
Yes, and as I understood it, they were indicating, the applicant that is, that they weren't going to proceed on that. That's how I understood it. I think if you're going to move to deny it based on their representations at the podium, I think you could just do them both at once.
Okay. Thank you. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission deny variance case number WPVAR 19-0003 for Cooper, having been unable to make all 5 findings required in accordance with Washoe County Development Code Section 110.804.25.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Donchak, a second by Commissioner Bruce. Any discussion on the motions? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving right along here. Find my place. Okay, 9C. Master Plan Amendment Case WMPA 19007, Regulatory Zone Amendment Case Number WZR, Development Code Amendment Case, Tahoe Area Plan Updates.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, possible action at the Planning Commission to adopt amendments to the following. 1, the Washoe County Code at Chapter 110 Development Code, Article 220, Tahoe Area, commonly referred to as the Tahoe Area modifiers. 2, Washoe County Code at Chapter 110 Development Code, adding Article 220.1, Tahoe Area Design Standards. 3, the Washoe County Master Plan Volume 2 Tahoe Area Plan, including changes to the goals, policies, and maps. And 4, the Tahoe Area Regulatory Zone Map. These amendments are meant to ensure the conformance of the Washoe County's Master Plan with the 2012 Regional Plan adopted by the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, TRPA, including, but not limited to, the following. A, adopting the TRPA's permissible uses set forth in TRPA Regional Plan Chapter 21 permissible uses in lieu of Washoe County's allowed uses set forth in Article 302 of the Washoe County Development Code. B, adopting design standards that are in conformance with the requirements set forth in TRPA Regional Plan Chapters 13 Area Plans and 36 Design Standards. C, adopting development standards that are consistent with the development standards set forth in the TRPA Regional Plan. D, adopting TRPA's master planned land use categories in lieu of Washoe County's master planned land use categories set forth in Article 106 of the Washoe County Development Code. E, adopting neighborhood plans utilizing the boundaries and allowed uses of TRPA's plan area statements and community plans in lieu of Washoe County's regulatory zones set forth in Article 106 of the Washoe County Development Code. F, adopting goals and policies for the following TRPA required subjects: land use, transportation, conservation, public services and facilities, recreation, and implementation. G, adopting TRPA's implementing plans by reference when necessary, including but not limited to portions of the TRPA Code of Ordinances and the Shore Zone Plan. And H, adopting other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto. And for staff, we have Eric Young.
Before you start, Eric, any disclosures by any of the commission, ethics or ex parte communications? Okay, great. Thanks, Eric. Floor yours.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Eric Young, a senior planner with the Planning Program. You may remember back in October, we came to you with the initiation of this. The plan we had at that time was called the Public Review Draft. That plan has been out for public review since that evening. We had a required neighborhood meeting in December, and we've been getting back a few comments since then. So the draft that you have before you tonight is substantially the same as the one that you saw to initiate in October, with a few changes to respond to some of the input that we had, and we can go through that as we go through this evening. Before I get started tonight, I want to let you know that Michael Conger from Tahoe Regional Planning Agency staff is here tonight. He has been, and the TRPA have been more than helpful. I really have to identify them as partners in this development. We have worked very closely alongside. We've really spent a lot of time learning how to work together. As you know, the model for the Regional Planning Agency there is for there to be one plan that's adopted by both entities. That requires a lot of coordination and work with each other. We are unclear as staff as to how much of the background of TRPA and the Tahoe planning regime and how that all came together, how much you are aware of, how much you'd like to know before we go tonight. So if you are interested, if it's something you'd like to have, Michael has brought a short presentation for you, and he can start the evening with some TRPA background. It's just in case you want it. We wanted to make sure it was available if you want it. Of course, it's your choice whether you want to see that short presentation on the TRPA and the regional plan and kind of why, the background of why we're doing this. If not, I'm happy to proceed straight into my presentation.
I see from the nods that the commissioners would like to have it.
Okay, then I'd like to introduce Mr. Conger from the TRPA, and they will bring up the alternative PowerPoint for Mr. Conger. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. This is the clicker. All right. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Michael Conger. I am a senior planner with Tahoe Regional Planning Agency's Long Range and Transportation Planning Division. And I'm here to speak today about how the Tahoe area plan that is proposed aligns with TRPA's regional plan. TRPA is a pretty unique bi-state planning agency. We were formed in 1969, largely in response to a boom in development in the Tahoe Basin following the 1960 Olympics. Our mandate as an agency is to establish environmental thresholds, develop a regional plan to meet those thresholds, and establish a permitting system to ensure that development maintains compliance with the regional plan. To give some perspective, this is an aerial image of the Reno-Tahoe region, looking southwest from Reno towards Lake Tahoe. And there's the state line there, which splits Lake Tahoe. About 1/3 of the lake is in Nevada. And this yellow boundary is Tahoe Regional Planning Agency's jurisdictional boundary. The boundary line runs along the ridge line, and TRPA's jurisdiction is effectively the Lake Tahoe watershed. The plan you're considering today covers all of the Washoe County area that is within the Tahoe Basin. Historically, the Lake Tahoe Regional Plan regulated uses and density using documents that we call plan area statements and community plans, and those were originally developed in the 1980s and 1990s. Those documents essentially serve the same function as zoning for the Tahoe region. In 2012, TRPA substantially revised the regional plan. That was the regional plan update that Eric mentioned earlier. At that time, we introduced a new concept that we called the area plan, which is very similar to how Washoe County's master plan has individual area plans. Area plans differ from the old TRPA planning documents in that they're prepared by the local jurisdiction. They become adopted by both the local jurisdiction as part of its master plan and also by TRPA as part of the regional plan. They can include substitute standards that differ from TRPA's general ordinance standards. And finally, they provide an avenue for the county to accept additional permitting authority.
Since 2012 regional plan, TRPA has been strongly encouraging local jurisdictions to develop area plans. We've had 5 done to date. And the reason we're encouraging this is that they're one of the most dynamic tools we have to implement our regional plan. They do this in a couple primary ways. The first is that they incentivize redevelopment. And so many of our commercial areas up at Lake Tahoe, they had development that occurred in the 60s and the 70s. It's legacy development. And a lot of concern around the regulations has been that that's preventing redevelopment from occurring. And so one of the big pushes with the 2012 regional plan is to incentivize redevelopment. And as we get new development happening, which we've seen a lot on the South Shore, as that happens, we get more attractive designs. We get improved water quality because they'll install stormwater best management practices. And we'll also get land use patterns that are more conducive to alternative transportation, biking, and cycling. Second big feature of area plans is that they enable permit delegation. After an area plan is adopted, Washoe County can enter into an agreement with TRPA where they accept additional permitting authority. And this allows TRPA to shift its focus to more regional projects, and it also streamlines permitting for your constituents who now would only have to go to one location to obtain permits for most development projects. Oops. Adoption of the area plan also gives us some immediate benefits. And then the first immediate benefit is our current system where we have TRPA's plan area statements and community plans on top of Washoe County zoning. It creates conflicts. And by adopting a single document that both TRPA and the county recognize, we eliminate those conflicts right off the bat. The plan also provides immediate incentives for the designated town centers, which are shown on this map here. These immediate benefits include the potential for additional height, additional density, and the ability to transfer in additional coverage so that you can cover up to 70% of a parcel. After county adoption, TRPA will conduct several hearings to review the plan for conformance with the standards of Chapter 13 of our Code of Ordinances. We've appreciated Washoe County staff's collaborative approach to the review, and we've been involved with reviewing early drafts, and they've made revisions incorporating our feedback, and the document before you substantially conforms with what is in Chapter 13 of TRPA's Code of Ordinances and conforms with our regional plan. I did provide a letter on Friday to the commission clerk identifying a couple corrections that we would like to see. Additionally, TRPA does encourage the Planning Commission to address concerns raised by members of the public before the plan proceeds to the TRPA conformance review process. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank your commission and Washoe County planning staff for this opportunity. I'm available for any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay, let's move on to Eric's presentation then.
Thank you, Michael. I'll proceed into the review of the actual update. I did include a series of slides in the beginning here that provide some of the background that Michael provided, just in case you didn't want to see his full presentation. So maybe we can skip through some of those, but we'll get started. There we go. Thank you, Katie. So you may have noticed tonight's staff report actually contains 3 separate amendments. And so before we get started, we should be clear on what exactly we're asking you to act on tonight. There is a master plan amendment that includes what the county refers to as the area plan or the master plan documents. TRPA's reference to an area plan includes the entire package of the development code and everything else. Our area plan is the master plan. We are also asking you to amend the development code. In this regard, we're asking you to amend that part of the development code that is under what we traditionally call the modifiers. Every area plan in the county has got a section in the code that has some things that modify the code. The Tahoe section is Article 220. That's where we're putting the development code regulations that implement the master plan that's being proposed. So that's where all the development code portion will be, is in 220. We're also proposing something called 220-1 instead of a 221 or however to get to the next one, which is just a set of design standards and guidelines that have actually been in place since the original adoption of the plan that TRPA had in place, but the county has never actually gone ahead and adopted. So we've made sure that those are up to date, and we're including that whole set of required design standards as a separate development code amendment. And then, of course, there's what you see sometimes, a regulatory zone map amendment. You know, we're not just changing MDS to neighborhood commercial. This is the entire map is changing out for an entirely new map wherein we are removing all references to the regulatory zones that you're familiar with, medium density, suburban, neighborhood commercial, general commercial, that you see down here in the valley. And they're replacing them with individual sub-district regulatory zones that were developed by the TRPA as our plan area statements and community plans in the old plan. So those are the three separate actions that you'll find in the staff report. There are three separate motions for you to consider for each one of these. So we'll go over goals very quickly. The unified approach that Michael mentioned, trying not to have county approach overlaid, TRPA approach, or vice versa, whichever one was overlaid on the other, they were intermingled, and it was difficult for everybody to interpret. That's going away. That was our number one goal. Of course, consistency with the regional plan has to happen. Anything we do, we have to be in conformance with the regional plan. And we wanted to make sure that coming forward, we adopt an area plan for the entire region. We could adopt area plans for just the town centers or just some specific areas. Other jurisdictions around the lake are adopting smaller area plans that don't cover their entire jurisdiction. We wanted to cover the entire jurisdiction. We find that to be the most comprehensive approach and the best way to make sure that we're consistent with the regional plan. And as always, when you're looking at something that hasn't been seriously touched and looked at since 1996, modernization, updating, what are the current economic realities and the social realities, a good strong look at that to make sure that we're not planning for a community in the 90s. I'm going to skip over quite a bit of this background because it was covered by Michael. So let's get right up to the community and the agency input. As mentioned, the plan that was out for the public review went out for public review just prior to your October initiation. The list of agencies that have seen it is attached. Actually, it's an extraordinarily extensive list of agencies that we sent it to, both public and private. You know, we've worked on this plan for a very long time, as I think some of you know. In fact, we did an initial initiation over a year ago. So the initiation that you did in October was a second go-around. But it's really in this past 12 months that a plan, a draft has started to coalesce. And we've been able to go to the CAB and some other community venues, start to get that feedback on individual sections. We brought the development code to the CAB separately. We brought the concepts for changing the maps to the CAB separately. And so some of these things have been reviewed independently over the last 12 months. The neighborhood meeting is a meeting that's required by statute and by code for master plan amendments. That was held on December 9th up at the Chateau in Incline. We had some good feedback, and we've actually made a few adjustments to the plan according to the feedback that we got at that night. We can see that that starts on page 6 of the staff report. If you want to have a look at some of the things that we changed, in particular, the draft that you had for initiation called all of these regulatory zones neighborhoods. Each one was called a neighborhood independently. And the term neighborhood was used extensively throughout the plan. That was a decision that I had made early on because I thought it, well, not a real technical reason. I just thought it had a nice ring to it. It sounded better than regulatory zone. So I went with that term, but I inadvertently caused a lot of confusion in the community about what some of the residents up there consider their neighborhoods, which don't match the boundaries of the regulatory zones. It turns out that some of the original plats in Tahoe, in Incline, have the same names that were associated with the neighborhoods in the plan area statements. And it was causing some confusion about whether the regulatory zones were about these original platted subdivisions or not. So we just removed all of the references to neighborhood. We're just calling them regulatory zones, and we actually added a little bit of language that tries to clarify the difference between a CCNR on a subdivision and a code, and who's responsible for each one. That was something that was causing quite a bit of confusion that we made an adjustment for. So let's go through what the master plan amendments actually do. Michael addressed several of the things that they do regarding how they address the thresholds. But what the master plan amendment looks like is 7 independent chapters. I include the introduction because normally you might not think that's important. This introduction is quite important because it includes what the community sees up front as their character statement. You're familiar in our other area plans, they have that significant character statement that says this is what we want to be about. And so that is laid out in there. That's another spot that we made a significant adjustment to after the initiation and the neighborhood meeting. There is a lot of concern voiced at recent community meetings about something the community calls over-tourism or tourism pressure. We saw a lot of it during the STR discussions, short-term rental discussions. And so in the discussion about the community, they wanted to make sure that in the character statement, it discusses their current state of affairs, being that perhaps the balance is shifting more than they would like towards tourism away from a residential community, and they wanted to make sure that concern about losing that balance is very strong right now, and they wanted that voiced in the character statement. So we tried to do that, to voice that concern. The land use transportation, you're familiar with these right through number 6 because they're all the same what we call elements in our master plan down here for the valley, for the meadows. So we have land use, transportation, conservation, recreation, public facilities, services and facilities. Those are all separate individual chapters that speak individually to the environmental thresholds that Michael mentioned are established in the regional plan. And these chapters discuss what those thresholds are and how we intend to meet them. And then in implementation, Once again, something that's new to us, but this is another important chapter because it really details more of the goals and policies that are action-oriented. What are we actually going to do? What are we expected? What are the actions that Washoe County is expected to do to implement the goals and policies that are found in the other chapters? So that's an overview of what the Tahoe area plan looks like. So one of the bigger changes that's different from what we have down here in the Meadows is we're not using any of our land use categories: rural residential, rural, suburban residential, commercial. Those that you may be familiar with down here no longer apply up there, just like the regulatory zones no longer apply. So we've adopted TRPA's land use categories. Here's the list. I think all of them exist up there except for backcountry. We don't have any backcountry designation in the Tahoe basin of Washoe County, but the other ones all exist. So the town centers, as Michael mentioned, are really one of the cruxes of the regional plan's attempt to get environmental redevelopment. The town centers are an area to focus all mixed use and tourist and development that's more than what you might think of as just residential or even single family residential. It's all of the more intense development should be focused into a town center. And to encourage people to come in and do some development, to come into those town centers and invest, to come into what Michael referred to as the legacy structures, the legacy buildings and projects, to come in and reinvest in those, pull a new building permit so that we can hit them up for all the new standards. That's the concept of environmental redevelopment. We want you to come in and redevelop it. We want you to come in and redevelop this parcel. When you do that, you're going to do it according to all the newest environmental standards, right? So how do we encourage people to come in and do it? We're offering them extra height, extra density, better transfer ratios, and increased coverage. These are all in the Tahoe Basin. These are all very meaningful things to a developer, to any property owner. So we'll see how they do. We don't have anybody in the basin, any existing new area plans, like Mike said, the new ones. We haven't really tested these incentives yet, but we'd like to give them a test and see if we can get people interested in investing in these town centers and achieving some of this environmental redevelopment. Another really important part of the environmental mission and the threshold achievement is the plan's focus on transportation, and in particular, the multimodal and alternative transportation. How people get to the basin and out of the basin, but then how they get around once they're there is one of the top things that's being discussed by all the jurisdictions. Everybody is struggling with this issue, and as you can imagine, with the Reno Tahoe area here and the enormous growth that we have the one little Mount Rose Highway is one of the major portals for tens of thousands of people to access the lake is right here in Washoe County. So we do have a special responsibility to ensure that the transportation system in our little part works. So not only does the transportation chapter mention transportation and its importance, you will find references to the importance of transportation in all of the chapters of the plan. We've tried to really integrate it and emphasize the importance of providing a variety of different transportation. We've spoke about the environmental thresholds and how those are more implemented into the code. So let's look at the development code amendments. Once again, it's to create a new Article 220 that's wholly amended with the new standards, and a 220.1, which is the Tahoe Area Design Standards. We talked about the regulatory zones, so we're removing all of references to our traditional zones, and we're creating 27 independent sub-districts that function as regulatory zones. The town centers are fully established inside the development code. There are sections that establish the boundaries with the maps. It articulates the standards for the height and the coverage and increased density, and all the other sets of regulations that go together with what it means to be a town center are all established in the development code. So once again, we've got the master plan that sets it up, and then the development code that implements it. They have to go together. Land use changes, we're not doing a lot of land use changes or what might be called zoning changes for what you can do somewhere. We really didn't want to trip too many environmental triggers that would result in the need for an environmental impact statement. We wanted to keep the level of environmental review as low as possible because that's time and money. We wanted to get to the adoption of a plan. So there are very few proposed changes to what you can actually do on a parcel. Here they are, the Ponderosa Ranch area. I'm sure all of you are familiar with where the Ponderosa Ranch is there as you head out of town to the south, and as you head maybe to Sand Harbor, right there before you leave Incline. That area there, maybe some of you don't remember, used to actually be an amusement park, and that's how it got its name, the Ponderosa Ranch. If you look at the existing set of uses associated with the Ponderosa Ranch regulatory zone, or what they used to call a community plan, it's all about the creation of the Ponderosa Ranch amusement park and creating that area and creating that atmosphere. This is one of those changes that we talked about up front, responding to new social and economic realities. This area is clearly evolving towards a recreation portal with the new multi-use trail that goes down to Sand Harbor, where the trails come down from Marlette Lake, and the bike trails come down out of the hills right there. It's evolving, and the plan anticipates it involving more as this recreation portal. And so we've removed references to amusement parks and other types of uses and tried to add uses more consistent with that. What do you do if you're riding your bike there, or you're going for a day at the lake? You might need to stop at a bank. You need to stop at these kinds of places, a place to grab some snacks or whatever. So we've tried to represent those uses a little more effectively in that area. Believe it or not, the chateau was not allowed to do what they call day use, or what would be showing up and spending a day snowshoeing on the golf course without a special use permit. As you can imagine, people are doing that every day. There is no special use permit in place. It could very well have been an oversight in the original establishment. So we're just saying you don't need a discretionary approval to snowshoe at the chateau. That's effectively what this means. We also had one special request from an entrepreneur, a business group that develops and runs nursing and personal care and residential care for seniors. The densities established in the plan now are too low for current business models. These uses can't be developed under the current density guidelines. And so they asked for an increase in density for these uses. We originally thought that they were asking for the increase only for memory care type uses. We heard from them in the last couple of days that while it's important for memory care as well, it's important for all of these. So your plan actually says that it's only for memory care, but with your blessing, we would like to change that to be for all nursing, personal care, and residential increase of density. I think that's the only change that I may be aware of that I'm requesting tonight. Of course, any changes that you have, anything that comes up, we can do this evening before it's over. Then there are some new concepts that we came up with, partly from public input, really partly just from the new environment of today's planning world. Potential natural hazards, as you can imagine, living in this part of the world, natural hazards of all sorts have become more interesting, more in front of people. So we've created a potential hazards map that shows if you are living or working in an area that may be subject to a variety of natural hazards, everything from wildfire to avalanche to tsunami, in fact. The map, the standards, not creating any new standards. We have pretty good standards for all of these areas. If you're in one of these areas, we already know it, we already require additional standards for you. But what it does is it shows you that you may be subject to those standards, and it tells you where to go find those standards. So we're hoping that that's beneficial. The county's emergency manager has indicated that he's pretty happy about it. He sees this as a really good first start. We also have a section on urban wildlife. The regional plan requires a section on urban bears. If we're gonna talk about bears, we might as well have, try and talk about everything else as well that we're starting to experience down here, from deer to everything, coyotes. We experience it all. We might as well have a standard for it. So we're trying to incorporate that there as well. We don't have a standard for forestry yet. We're strongly encouraged to have one. And so we have committed to developing one. But there's some really interesting science going on at the lake, and the TRPA has suggested that they're okay with us waiting for the outcome of that science before we develop our plan. And then the biggest thing that's new for us is greenhouse gas reduction standards. That's also required by the regional plan, but everybody has a different approach to it. We've come up with some standards that are kind of a menu approach that allows our director to determine whether you meet them or not, but you can choose from a long list of sustainability, carbon reduction, greenhouse gas reduction standards for your development. It's required if you're in a town center. It's required to get, if you want the extra height in the town center, you have to do this. There's some other times when you have to do it, some other times when if you do it, you get something for doing it. We suggest that all new county buildings, anything the county builds up there would have to meet the standard. And so this is very new for Nevada. It turns out we've developed something that people are pretty excited about. They like it as a good first start. Some people wish it'd go further. Some people think it's far enough, but it's something that has got people's attention as Washoe County, making a little bit of an extra effort to do what's required of it. We've already spoken of the design standards. Those are very important to meet the regional plan's expectations for community design standards. We talked about the regulatory zone map amendment, the third amendment of the night, where we completely replaced the existing map with a map that depicts these 27 subdistricts, each with a name and number. We maintain the names because they're long-standing. They've been there since before '96, but we don't refer to them as neighborhoods any longer. So this recommendation in motion is in your staff report. There are separate possible motions for each one of these actions. I hope I got this right. I think it's page 12 of your staff report where you can find those. I think we've gone on for quite a while. I know there may be questions. I'm going to stop now and try and answer your questions to the best of my ability. Here, for people in the audience and for you, if you want to jot some of this down, is where you can find the additional information that Michael was talking about, and some of the codes and ordinances that we refer to and adopt by reference. It's all at the trpa.org website. And it's, as I've mentioned each time I've come before you, it's worth taking a visit to the website here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And for the audience's information, I use my discretion as the chair to allow Eric the additional time he needed to make this presentation. This is a big deal. So that's where we're at. Is there any questions from the commission for Eric? Not at this time.
Not at this time.
Pardon?
Not at this time.
Okay.
I do have one
Commissioner
question.
Spillichak.
Thank you, Chair Chesney. Mr. Young, you did put the draft Tahoe area plan in our packet, but is it the intent that once this has moved through the process that it will have page numbers and a glossary, an index?
Oh, yes, Mr. Chair, Commission. We're not sure whether you're going to ask for any changes. We weren't sure.
Okay, okay.
And that the pagination on a document like this is, I don't mean to make excuses, but it's laborious and time-consuming, and the fewer times we have to do it. And so my legal advice has been that the glossary is not required as part of what goes forward. That can be established at a later time. Well, the table of contents, not the glossary. The table of contents will be established. The page numbers will all be there. And
Just
stuff,
as a point of reference, when I was reviewing this, it was very hard to find things. So
Sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. I truly am.
extremely
Yeah.
hard. So, okay, thank you. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Not at the moment. Okay. Then I'm going to ask for public comment. Is there any public comment?
Alexandra Profant.
Alexander Profant, I live in Incline Village, grew up in Washoe County, was born in Reno, and have submitted an application for the District 1 seat. I would like to speak on behalf of many people from Incline Village, Crystal Bay, who could not be here tonight. They had no idea that this was up for a second vote. And I presume that when they find out, if indeed you agree to this without a District 1 seat, that there will be an appeal to the County Commission, and there may be enormous liabilities to this county, as there have been in the past due to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency ignoring federal mandates that are required by law, including our right to a certified local government. This book, A Richer Heritage by Robert Stipe, is about the Bible on historic preservation. When you talk about redevelopment opportunities, historic preservation was created in order to incentivize redevelopment opportunities. Had the TRPA actually conducted and implemented the Incline Vision effort to describe and abstract architectural types, patterns, and styles that set a world standard around view corridors, transparency, materials, blocking, scale, in Incline Village with famous architects such as Richard Neutra, who designed and invented plywood and built the Reno Convention Center and the Arts Building at the University of Nevada, Reno. Chuck Merdinger, who helped preserve Sierra Nevada College, received his papers. This region has an enormous, enormous rich architectural history. It is that architectural history of the past and the great work that Washoe County planning staff has done that will move Incline Village, Crystal Bay, District 1, Washoe County forward with redevelopment opportunities, provided that you and we understand that the criteria and standard that needs to be established is whether and if and how owner occupancy versus transient occupancy can be included in a protective code locally. And that is the whole purpose of a certified local government, so that we can establish a criterion standard for protection of property. North Carolina has established a protection that allows local homeowners to occupy residential units. It is through the listing and the standards that a certified local government creates and the criteria that incentivize the preservation tax credit, which can actually pencil out an entire project for redevelopment. Skipping over it and changing all the nomenclature for planning suddenly with all these new maps and not having this room full of people, had they known that what is at stake tonight is at stake, I'm outraged, quite frankly. We founded the Tahoe Foundation to deal with this issue. I would like for you to table this or deny everything, please, on behalf of everyone. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
No further public comment.
Okay, seeing there be no, anybody from the audience, you want a shot at it? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to closed public comment, bring it back to the commission for any further questions of staff.
I first would like to thank staff for their effort, but I do have some problems. And I have a strong reluctance to cast the die with this at this point in time. I just don't see that we talk about that it's coalescing, not that it's coalesced. And these are huge changes, and I have trouble supporting approving it and recommending full approval without some safety catches or backstops in going forward, and I don't see them. And so, but I know it's been a lot of work. It's been hard work, and the work is deeply appreciated. And I want to thank you for that while I state my reservations.
Any other questions or comments?
Chair Chesney?
Oh, Commissioner Spillier.
Thank you. I have a question for council. Is the body as a whole hears any of these master plan amendments, regulatory zone amendments, development code amendments? It isn't bound by what districts we represent.
That's correct. You're all participants in the Planning Commission. You're representative of everyone in the county. So you are appointed from different districts, some of you at large, but you're correct in your principal assertion.
Thank you.
Seeing no further, seeing no further discussion, I'm closing the public hearing. And I guess we have no further discussion. I'll call for a motion.
I will add, Mr. Chair, if I could, on Mr. Bruce's point, you are free to, continue this out if you wanted to, or if there were any pieces of it that you thought, need some more work or things like that. But you're also agendized to move on this tonight. So I think that's something at least keep in mind, that you have the power to do.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Eric.
Mayor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Eric Young, planning staff. I greatly appreciate Commissioner Bruce's comments. I understand where he's coming from. This is a lot. It's a big change. I've resisted all evening saying that it's a big change, but nothing changes. Land uses don't change. What people can do with their property essentially doesn't change. Borders don't change. There's so much that just doesn't change, but it's still new. There's still significant change to absorb. And the Deputy DA Edwards is exactly right. You continue any of these, whatever you feel you need to do, we'll respect and we'll move forward on your direction. The backstop that I would propose that Mr. Bruce is not seen is unable to see tonight. The backstop that I would propose that is there is that when we try this, when we kick it in and we say, let's go, let's start issuing building permits and see what the rules are and see how this goes, the little things that don't work, and there could be a couple, we'll just come back here and we'll say, hey, guess what? We found out that didn't work. Would you mind if we change it to this? That's the plan. That's the backstop plan. If that's not sufficient, provide us with some direction about what further work you need us to do to get to a point where you're comfortable. We'll be happy to do that further work. But as we stand here tonight, I think staff is prepared to give this a shot. We've done in-house training. All the other planners have read it. There's going to be more in-house training as we go forward. The community has heard about it for literally years, and this particular plan for about a year. This specific plan for many months. All of the agency, the extensive agency review list, we only got back comments from a handful of them. We'd like to give it a shot. And you can rest assured that if it doesn't work, if there's some section, some particular code, something that we overlooked, we'll march back in here, apologize for it, and ask you to help us fix it. So that's my input on Commissioner Bruce's excellent comment. So thank you.
Thank you. I have a comment. This is as staff has explained, a major change in the plan. We see on a monthly basis amendments to area plans and the master plan. If something doesn't work, I think this is an excellent starting point, in my opinion, and I'm going to support the plan.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Svolchek.
And maybe my perspective of this is framed in what three of us just spent the last 2 years of our lives doing, which was a regional plan update. And so, and being cognizant of what we went through and all of the review and all of the public comment, I do applaud staff for a very comprehensive plan, sans page numbers and table of contents. But as you duly noted, Chair Chesney, that no matter how new the ink is on anything, it can be reviewed and amended. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Well, before we make a motion, again, I want to commend Eric and staff for this intense 400-something pages of reading. And I'm saying I've gone through a lot, and the detail in here is extreme. It is fantastic with the detail that you put in there. And with the number of entities that you had to deal with, that this is a bi-state agreement, it's not just Washoe County, state. I want to say thank you to you and staff and to everyone that went to this level of detail, because this is the most intense that I have ever seen for reading. So thank you for that at this point.
So I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I want to add one more thing.
Yes, sir. Mr. Edwards.
Regardless of what the action is tonight, the nothing is approved for final purposes tonight. The master plan goes on to, if it's approved, goes to the county commission. The county commission has to approve it. It's still not approved at that point. Then it goes to regional planning commission, which has to find it in conformance. That potentially could be challenged and brought up to the regional planning governing board, and only after it goes through all of the conformance findings is the master plan portion finally actually approved. The zoning changes also must go to the county commission and must be approved, so they are not final tonight, nor are the development code amendments, because the county commission has to conduct a first reading and a second reading and public hearing to adopt those ordinances. And the reality of all of this is that the zoning and ordinances are part of the overall package, and until there's a conformance finding on the master plan, the whole thing is going to be held, I guess, in abeyance, as it were. So there is another hearing at the county commission and at least another hearing at the regional planning commission, for more public participation, more opportunity for people to speak, and all those types of things. So I want to remind the commission of that as well, that this is not the be-all, end-all decision tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Or motions.
Commissioner Chesney. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission adopt Master Plan Amendment Case WPA 19-0007 per the resolution included as Exhibit B, having made the following 5 findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.820.15, parentheses D. I further move to certify that the resolution and the proposed master plan amendment, WPA 19-0007, as set forth in this staff report for submission to the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners, and authorize the chair to sign the resolution on behalf of the Planning Commission. Moving on to the regulatory zone amendment, I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission adopt the resolution included as Exhibit C, recommending adoption of the regulatory zone amendment case number WZA 19-0007, having made all of the following findings in accordance with Washoe County Development Code Section 110.821.15, parentheses D. I further move to certify that the resolution and proposed regulatory zone amendment in WRZA 19-0007, as set forth in the staff report for the submission to the Washoe County Board of Commissioners, and authorize the chair to sign the resolution on behalf of the Planning Commission. As to the development code case, I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission adopt the resolution included as Exhibit D, recommending the adoption of development code amendment case WDCA 19-0007, having made all of the following findings in accordance with the Washoe County Development Code Section 110.821.15, parentheses D. I further move to certify that the resolution and the proposed development code amendment in WDCA 19-0007, as set forth in the staff report for submission to the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners, and authorize the chair to sign the resolution on behalf of the Planning Commission.
We have a motion by Commissioner Donchak. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a second by Commissioner Vilichak. I'm going to call for a vote.
Mr. Chair, we have one item that we want to have one moment to take a look at before there's a vote on the motion.
Okay.
Thank you. To clarify on the record, the references to regional planning from my comments earlier, this is in the ambit of the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and not the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. So I wanted to make that clear for the record.
Thank you. I was just going to address that too, because I hurried over there with the map, so.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
We're
at the.
we're at-
just wanted a
motion
clarification
stage, right?
on something. Can I get a clarification on that motion?
It's your motion.
Well, I won't interrupt if you don't want, I'm just asking for a clarification. It was on the development code portion. It seems like you did 3 motions.
Right.
And
All
there's
three.
one vote. Is that how you want to do it, or 3 votes?
It's one motion with three pieces to it, and
Right, so it's just one
I think
Okay.
if anybody has any issues with any part of it, they would speak up, so.
Okay. Does the development code amendment include the change I suggested to remove references to only memory care and expand it to all the different assisted living?
I'll amend my motion to reference the amended motions that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll second that amended motion.
I'm calling for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay, we have one nay, so what do we? The vote passes. All right. Before we go to the next, we've been at it 2 hours. Does anybody want to take a 10-minute break?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we are going to take a 10-minute break. turn off my timer. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. And we're going to move to item 9D. Master Plan Amendment and Regulatory Zone Amendment, case numbers WMPA 19-009 and WRZA 19-009, Reno Stead Corridor Joint Plan. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, Master Plan Amendment, case number WMPA 19-0009, and Regulatory Zone Amendment, case number WRZA 19-0009, Reno Stead Corridor Joint Plan. 4, possible action, hearing, and discussion. 1, adopt a Master Plan Amendment to the North Valleys Area Plan, a component of the Washoe County Master Plan, to remove all references to the Reno Stead Corridor Joint Plan, RSCJP, from the North Valleys Area Plan and to sunset the RSCJP, changing all existing RSCJP Master Plan land use designations on 416 parcels of land totaling approximately 734.85 acres from RSCJP designated medium-density suburban/suburban residential and low-density suburban/rural residential to Washoe County Master Plan category of suburban residential, SR, from Reno Stead Corridor Joint Plan designated high-density rural, HDR, to Washoe County Master Plan category of rural residential, RR, from RSCJP designated general rural, GR, to Washoe County Master Plan category of rural, R, from RSCJP designated general commercial, GC, to Washoe County Master Plan category of commercial, C, and from RSCJP designated public and semi-public facilities, PSP, and RSCJP designated parks and recreation, PR, to Washoe County Master Plan category of open space, OS. If approved, authorize the chair of the Washoe County Planning Commission and to forward their recommendation on to the Washoe County Commission for possible approval. And 2, subject to final approval and adoption of the associated Master Plan Amendment and a finding of conformance with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan, to recommend adoption of an amendment to the North Valleys Regulatory Zone Map, changing all existing RSCJP land use designations on 416 parcels of land totaling approximately 734.85 acres from RSCJP designated medium-density suburban/suburban residential, that is MDS/SR, to Washoe County regulatory zoning of medium-density suburban, which is MDS-3, MDS, that is 3 dwelling units to the acre, from RSCJP designated low-density suburban/suburban residential, LDS-RR, to Washoe County regulatory zoning of low-density suburban, LDS is 1 dwelling unit to the acre, from RSCJP designated high-density rural, HDR, to Washoe County regulatory zoning of HDR, high-density rural, that is 1 dwelling unit per 2 acres, from Reno Stead RSCJP designated general rural, GR, to Washoe County regulatory zoning of GR. GR is 1 dwelling unit per 40 acres, from Reno Stead Corridor Joint Plan designated general commercial to Washoe County regulatory zoning of general commercial, GC, from Reno Stead Corridor Joint Plan designated public and semi-public facilities, PSP, to Washoe County regulatory zoning of public and semi-public facilities, PSP, and from Reno Stead Corridor Joint Plan designated parks and recreation, PR, to Washoe County regulatory zoning of parks and recreation, PR. If approved, authorize the chair to sign the resolution to this effect.
Is that it?
Probably go on.
Okay, Julie. Julie Orlander is going to give us a presentation. Do we have any disclosures by commissioners on ethics or ex parte communications? Being none. Julie, we're all yours.
Good evening, Julie Olander for Planning and Building. So before you have a master plan amendment and zone change concerning the Reno-Sid Corridor Joint Plan, which I'm going to call just the joint plan going forward. It gets a little complicated, as Roger experienced. So there's a master plan amendment to sunset the plan, the joint plan, and then also to remove any reference to it in the North Valley area plan. And then also to change the zoning from the joint plan to standard Washoe County regulatory zoning categories. This plan was sort of put together in the early late 1990s by the Regional Planning Board that decided that there was a need for it out there because of some of the issues that were going on. So the plan was put together to develop and address issues concerning land use, conservation, some of the public services out there, and it provided specific policies for those areas. And then the joint plan was adopted by the 2007 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. I just want to point out that it is through NRS allows joint plans to be adopted, and they have to be adopted by the two jurisdictions and then included in the area plan, the regional plan. Since the plan was adopted, there have been amendments to it, and there were significant amendments made to it in 2009 after City of Reno had adopted the North Virginia Transit-Oriented Development District, or the TOD, because a lot of those parcels had been part of the joint plan and then were pulled into the TOD plan. So those were pulled out of the joint plan, and so the joint plan became significantly smaller then. Here's a map showing in the blue the areas that are in Washoe County that are still in the joint plan that we are looking at changing. And then I also want to point out that that it was during the 2019 that some of you were of the area plan of the regional plan that the joint plan was eliminated in a sense. It was discussed, and there was a discussion that it was no longer needed to be moved forward. So when the 2019 area joint plan, regional plan was adopted, that joint plan was not included. And at that point, staff was directed to convert everything that was in the joint plan to just standard Washoe County master plan designation and regulatory zones. And that's why we're here tonight. There are 416 parcels. They are in various places out in the Reno-Sid area. The parcels are owned by numerous property owners. And again, the point to being here today is to just convert them over to the standard Washoe County master plan designated and regulatory zoning. This is basically a change of name. And as I'll show here, I've listed the designations currently that Mr. Pelham read off, but I'll just start off with the first few. You can see there's basically seven designations, and then they will be converted over to the Washoe County master plan designation. So the first one is medium density suburban/suburban residential. That will go to Washoe County suburban residential. The next one's low density, and it will go to suburban residential, and then so on and with the other categories. So that's what we're here today to change. This is from the master plan designation, so it would change to the suburban residential, which is a Washoe County master plan designation. Rural residential is a Washoe County master plan designation. Commercial, rural, open space, those are all Washoe County master plan designations. And then for the zoning, it's somewhat the same. So medium density suburban residential, which is the joint plan designation, will just go to medium density suburban, which allows 3 units per acre. And then the same thing with low density suburban residential will go to just low density suburban LDS, which allows 1 unit per acre. So there's not a lot of change. It's just a naming change, really. Somewhat similar to what you just heard on the Tahoe plan. You know, a lot of it is just, it's not a radical change. It's just, in this situation, it truly is just a name change. So people are not going to lose the uses they have on their properties. They maintain the same zoning and master plan designation that they would have if they were strictly in Washoe County and didn't have the joint plan as an overlay. This is a side-by-side showing the master plan designation. It's probably not as clear here as it is in the zoning side-by-side. If you look at the areas, they're pretty much the same color, so that what was low density under the joint plan is now low density, which was low density, and I can't remember the slash, whatever it was in the joint plan is now just straight low density in Washoe County. This did go before the North Valley CAB on the 13th of January. The CAB did vote to deny the amendments. They had concerns about properties being annexed into the city of Reno. Also, they felt like it was better oversight to have Reno and this Washoe County decide on these properties. They felt like it was sort of a double representation. And then there were several comments about not trusting that county to do the right thing for their properties out there. I want to make a note, this was incorrectly stated in your staff report. 530 property owners were noticed, and it was noticed in the RJGJ on the 24th of January. Also, this was sent out to numerous agencies. There was no comments that, of denial from those agencies. These are the 6 findings that you need to make, and staff was able to make those findings. And also, there's a North Valley area plan finding that needs to be made, and that is located on your in your staff report on page 15. And then there's some that's somewhat the same for the zoning, the zone changes. There are 7 findings, and those are a motion is found on page 16 of your staff report. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Do we have any questions?
Not just a question, but a clarification, just to get it out there. So the new 2019 TMPRA, they removed the plan, the joint corridor plan from the plan. So they no longer designate it as an area of joint. So it doesn't really exist anymore. Is that technically what you're trying to say?
And because NRS is what drives, NRS, and I did bring this, I thought, Mr. Edwards would probably have it, but NRS 278.02784 lays out how a joint plan can be designated. And it does basically state that it is a regional planning commission. It's one of their duties to do that. It's not something that we as Washoe County could do or the city of Reno could do. It has to be done by the joint planning agency, the regional planning agency. And that was what happened in 2007 because of some of the issues that were going on out there. However, when the regional plan was updated in 19, it was not in that, it's not in that plan. So it wasn't not even brought, it's just not there. It's gone. And that came about after discussions between the city of Reno and Washoe County and the need for the plan or not. And it was decided that it wasn't needed, so it's not even mentioned in the plan. And because of that, we don't have, we can't even maintain the plan because if the regional planning agency does not have it in their plan, then per NRS, it really doesn't have a place to live anymore.
Julie, thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions? Okay, then I guess I'm going to ask for public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Ray Lake, followed by Patrick Shea.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for this time. I think we might need a little clarification. I'm not sure that it was the county that we didn't trust. I think we don't trust the city of Reno. But I did attend the January 13th meeting, and I was not convinced that this needs to go away. I think that both bodies do need to represent their respective citizens and property owners. The purpose of this was that there should be some agreement. And there are still issues of significance to both sets of property owners. That we have the issues with Swan Lake, we have drainage, we have all kinds of things going on that still should be under the purview of this plan. And I just feel like this is a case of the county commission essentially abdicating their responsibility to represent the property owners in the North Valleys. And we really only have one commissioner that represents the North Valleys and stands up to us. It seems like the developers have the ear of all four of the other commissioners. And it takes more than just the city annexing a piece of property there, and then they essentially do as they please. We pretty much understand that the city of Reno has not seen a development they didn't like, and they let everything go on through, and they are not looking out for existing North Valleys residents and property owners, and I think that the joint corridor plan should remain in effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Patrick Shea.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Shea. I'm a resident of Golden Valley and North Valleys. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for giving me this time to speak tonight. I am also the current chair of the North Valleys Citizens Advisory Board, and we did vote, as Julie said, to deny this proposal, and that's why I'm here tonight. I like the way Julie presented this tonight. It's much more than what we got. We were very short on presentation materials and maps the size that we could see. Her presentation here is something different than what we got in the CAB meeting. And I'm reticent to what I'm going to say, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyhow because I think it's adequate. It is our concern that removing Washoe County from the Joint Stead Corridor Agreement, that it will adversely affect the North Valleys in the future, how North Valleys develops. The overriding issue in North Valleys at this time is the expansive growth of Reno annexed properties. These properties all tend to develop as warehouses, hundreds of warehouses out there. And these warehouses cover great vast areas of land, and they cover it with impermeable materials. These impermeable materials turn storm runoff into runoff that ends up in the closed basin of Swan Lake. We've all heard this before. Swan Lake is a story of developments that were brought before the county and denied, and then show up in a few months annexed to the city of Reno, and they get approved. Our great concern for our citizens is no longer that we no longer have a voice against the negative changes in our community. We have seen over and over the effects of Reno allowing industries to invade our residential areas with little or no concern for the citizens inhabiting close by homes. The NVCAB meeting was attended by many of the same residents who voiced opposition to this resolution, which drove the NVCAB to deny this resolution. And to recap, I think I have enough time. The missing voice of the county resident is what is here. We have no voice with the city of Reno. If you're a resident of the county, you can't come before the City Planning Commission and speak. They don't recognize you. So I'm here today to ask the Planning Commission to also deny this resolution so that we can maintain a voice through the joint corridor planning area to the city of Reno. When the city of Reno wants a plan, they have to bring it before a joint meeting so that both county and city residents can speak on that same plan. If it were up to me, I would extend the area of the planning corridor to include the entire basin, the drainage area, into Swan Lake. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
No further public comment.
Okay, seeing that there's no further public comment, I'm going to, do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff right now?
Chair Chesney, yes. And I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask the question in terms of, as a member of, having been involvement with the Joint Corridor Plan for essentially since its inception, the joint corridor, in terms of what can be considered actual joint planning, there's very few pieces of property that come under that plan currently because of the annexations and all of that. So with regards to what you're recommending here is, it's the Washoe County property, I mean, it's the pieces of designated land that are solely within the jurisdiction of Washoe County, is that correct?
Julie Olinda with Planning and Building. Yes, that's correct. So we only have a few parcels that are left. This isn't the best map. Maybe I thought I had included another map, and I apologize for that. Maybe that captures it better. So there aren't a lot of parcels left. Horizon Hills is sort of down there on the south side, lower part of the map, and then there's area off of Red Rock. So there's just little pockets left that we have any kind of jurisdiction over. I did understand the concerns at the CAB, and I tried to convey that there were only a few parcels left. And unfortunately, because it's not included in the regional plan any longer, we don't have a mechanism to maintain the plan. I don't think that was heard. There were a lot of people there, and I think that just got lost at that meeting. So I do apologize for that.
That would be my next question. For all intent and purposes, because this is not in the 2019 regional plan update, the joint plan does not exist.
In a sense that, NRS does not give us direction on how to sunset a joint plan. It tells us how to set a joint plan up, but we couldn't find anything in NRS that told us how to remove it. So it's basically, if it's not in the regional plan, then I don't see how we can maintain the joint plan. And so unfortunately for the North Valleys area and the people that live out there who would like to have a situation where Reno and Washoe County have to have conversation about the development that's going on there, the joint plan I'm not sure how well it served its purpose. I think that was one of the reasons it wasn't moved forward in the regional plan, because it wasn't serving that purpose any longer. A lot of the properties got pulled out at different points, and that, I think, was part of the discussion at regional.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
And I don't know if Mr. Pelham can address this, but I will ask my fellow commissioners that also jointly sit on regional plan. Prior to the joint plan being pulled from the 2019 plan, City of Reno staff, Washoe County staff agreed that the joint plan no longer served its original intent. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, for the record, Roger Pelham with Planning. Yes, I believe that's a fair statement.
So planning staff from the two jurisdictions were in agreement of sunsetting the joint corridor plan?
Yes, and I think that perhaps one of the sort of important aspects to that is we're really talking about only about 700 acres that are remaining, and those are not contiguous, so these are really just little checkerboard areas throughout sort of the North Valleys area plan. It is really no longer the corridor that it once was.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, are we good there? Is there any public comment on this?
No, we've already done
Oh, we did that. All right, okay. I'm screwed up. All right, okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion. If being no further discussion, I guess I'll call for a motion. Well, Mr. Edwards, seems that we don't appear to have a motion.
Well, I'm prepared to make that motion.
Oh, well, by all means.
I was just,
Wake up.
well, no, I mean, I guess I do have a question of counsel prior to me making that motion, because myself and Chair Chesney and Commissioner Barnes represent Washoe County on regional planning. And we were the three representing Washoe County that voted for the approval of the regional plan, 2019 regional plan, which was unanimously approved by all entities. Can I make this motion?
Yes, you can. This comes up commonly. County commissioners, for example, serve on a multitude of different boards, Regional Transportation Commission, Truckee Meadows Water Authority, Reno Sparks Convention Visitors Authority, and so on. And it's not at all uncommon for them to have to hear a matter that also is within the scope of one of those other entities. I guess for a lack of a better way of putting it, the way the law treats this is that the limited number of public officials and public servants that are willing to participate on these boards and in these capacities have to be allowed the latitude to serve in these dual capacities. And so with respect to this particular instance, you serving on the Regional Planning Commission does not impair your ability to serve on the Washoe County Commission or Planning Commission. In fact, you wouldn't even be on the Washoe County Planning or the Regional Planning Commission if you weren't on the Washoe County Planning Commission. And so that cart came before that horse, as it were. And so the bottom line is that no, you are not prohibited from participating in this simply because you dealt with this issue or a similar issue on the Regional Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. So,
Commissioner
Mr. Chair.
Svrlicek.
Yes. With regards to item 9D, Master Plan Amendment Case Number WMPA 19-009, Reno-Stead Corridor Joint Plan. I move, after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission adopt the resolution contained in Exhibit A to the staff report to amend the master plan as set forth in Master Plan Case Number WMPA 19-0009, having made the following 5 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code Section 110.820.15D and the required North Valleys Area Plan finding. I further move to certify the resolution and the proposed master plan amendments in WMPA 19-0009 as set forth in the staff report for the submission to the Washoe County Planning Board of County Commissioners and authorize the chair to sign the resolution on behalf of the Planning Commission. And having made all findings with reference to Washoe County Development Code and the North Valleys Area Plan required finding. And then I further move regulatory zone amendment case number WRZA 19-0009, Reno-Stead Corridor Joint Plan. I move, after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and the information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission adopt the resolution included in Exhibit B, recommending adoption of the regulatory zone amendment case number WRZA 19-0009, having made all the following findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code Section 110.821.15D. I further move to certify the resolution and proposed regulatory zone amendment in WRZA 19-0009 as set forth in the staff report for submission to the Washoe County Board of Commissioners and authorize the chair to sign the resolution on behalf of the Washoe County Planning Commission.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Svrlicek and a second by Commissioner Bruce. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. We're going to leave the public hearings planning items. No, this is still in planning items. Item 10, for possible action to designate a planning commissioner to sit on the RRIF/GAM Technical Advisory Committee. It's, Roger, you want to go on? You want me to finish this, or you want to?
I can read it if you like.
All right. Regional Transportation Commissioning, RTC, is looking for a volunteer from the Planning Commission to sit on the Regional Road Impact Fee acronym RRIF, General Administrative Manual, GAM, Technical Advisory Committee. The purpose of the RRIF GAM TAC is to review review and recommend any modifications, additions, or updates to be made to the RRIF GAM and Capital Improvements Plan. The RRIF/GAM TAC typically meets as on an as-needed basis. Trevor's not here tonight. So anyhow, this is a voluntary position. It's not there's no money for showing up, and you got to show up to the meetings. For an example, I sit on the Plan Review Committee. It meets monthly. I come in for an hour and we go over plans, and so I take care of that. Does anybody on the board here want to volunteer for this assignment?
It does, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we do need a volunteer from the Washoe County Planning Commission.
For the record, Roger Pelham, that is the request.
Okay, thank you.
Who's requesting it? Well,
The county, I presume it's Trevor Lloyd as planning manager.
The request is coming from the RTC.
Okay.
I guess I'll do it. So, I mean, does anybody got a problem with? Motion?
I would move that Commissioner Chesney represent this body to the Regional Transportation Commission.
I second that motion.
Well, we have a motion by Commissioner Slavichek and a second by Commissioner Donchek. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. You got to call for public comment.
Oh, God.
Public comment, you have to call for it on the record.
On this?
Yes.
Okay, is there any public comment on it?
There is, yeah. Alexandra Profont.
Hello again. The reason I wanted to comment on this is I was hoping that you might table this until there was a first district seat appointment. And regardless of whether if the District 1 seat appointment for the Planning Commission here would be interested in this or not, I also thought it would behoove you to understand that regarding multimodal transit relative to any zoning or heritage corridors, that there is an extensive report provided by the American Institute of Architects called the AIA Sustainability Design Assessment Team Report that was actually done in this region around 2006, 2007. And it is extensive, comprehensive, and incredibly informative. So I would just like to add that you can visit that report on the Tahoe Foundation website, www.tahoefoundation.com. I've got it posted there under Education and Outreach, and I would highly recommend anybody who's going to be exploring transportation planning and the idea of heritage corridors to visit that document because it's incredibly informative about this region. Thank you.
Thank you. So, do we have a motion?
We've made a motion.
Made a motion.
Yeah, okay. We could just have it out of order, I guess.
I think you do need to recast the vote, finalize your vote after public comment.
One quick point, even by voting it tonight, you're not voted in for life.
I know.
Well,
I mean, I'm just, and it- not denigrating in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, you are.
I appreciate it. I just, you know, it's,
This is not a lifetime appointment.
Yeah.
No, this is not a lifetime appointment.
Ah, too bad. Okay,
All right.
all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Okay.
Okay, we're leaving planning items. We're going to item 11 on the agenda, chair and commission items. Any future agenda items? I have one. I would like to have by our March meeting, a presentation on the county's land acquisition plan. That's,
Oh, yeah.
Public land acquisition, is that what you mean?
well, it's the land plan.
It came out.
There hasn't been a lot of public information on it, and I'd like to have the commissioners brought up to date on where we stand with the land plan.
I started reading it, it's long.
Any other future agenda items? Or requests for information from staff? Okay, being none, Director's Legal Counsel items, report on previous Planning Commission items. That would be you, Roger.
Yeah. Roger.
I have nothing to report.
Cool.
Or let me rephrase that. I was given nothing to report.
And Mr. Edwards?
No, I have nothing else to add tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Final general public comment and discussion.
Alexandra Perfont.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to all my comments tonight. I'm very passionate about the preservation of the home I love, which is Nevada. And I've spent many years going abroad and to other places that teach about preservation planning and architecture conservation in order to bring back my knowledge to you. It is hard sometimes because part of the rural areas we love mean that a lot of people don't live here, and we end up obviously having to wear a lot of hats. And I was called an activist out there, which I've never been called before, but since I have been doing this in a volunteer capacity for many years in order to understand what I'm learning to be able to offer to you, as a foundation director, I'm hoping to create a curriculum with a former community management planner who happens to be on our board to present some items to you, because the topic of preservation planning is broad and deep. And one of the things that causes me such anxiety is there are enormous advantages, especially if locals establish that criteria and standard around owner occupancy. And with the short-term rental issue before us, part of the issues that preservation planning look at are land use conversions from residential to commercial. And the reason that's a very important point is because these real estate investment trusts, which were actually a vehicle created by preservation planners to incentivize investment and redevelopment, it means that anybody can own property collectively from anywhere around the world through residential mortgage-backed real estate trusts. And we can't see them. So it's a corporate person essentially getting all of the rights that are inalienable under Article 1, Section 1 of Nevada's Constitution to protect and possess property, but we can't see this corporate person. And that's very important because those tax incentives ultimately get realized to develop the project, and often the project requires forcing owners out. It has to be a rented property so that it can be deemed commercial to be held in those trusts. And if you can't see this and you're not aware of what's going on, suddenly the whole region can be owned collectively by a very large remote contingency. And the only way we have control over that ultimately is to be able to take a step forward and own that criteria and standard and create a protective and privacy zone mechanism for owners to protect their property as natural persons within the scope of the regional and general plan under our state. And I was very interested to hear about the CAB in the North Valley region, because heritage corridors are one of the biggest incentives that can actually create and help us compete with funding and to get a funding mechanism to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further public comment?
No further public comment.
Well, I'll be darned. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all right. We're adjourned. Robert's Rules of Order say you don't need a second. Shut up.